If you're looking to install your GPU vertically in your case to really show it off, then Lian Li's multi-directional vertical GPU bracket might be the best option for you. This is a pretty awesome bit of kit with a number of really nice highlights to it, which as you can see look really nice in these two different builds. It has a little RGB strip along the bottom, but more interestingly it's customizable in terms of the position of how it sits in three different positions, either all the way back so it looks really nice, all the way forward so it gets better airflow, or somewhere in the middle. It also has an anti-sag bracket on the right hand side, as you can see, which is really rare for a vertical GPU mount, so it gives your GPU the support it needs. Now I will say this is one of the more fiddly vertical brackets that I put into a case with a number of different steps that I want to show you to sort of highlight the things you need to know as we go through. But as you can see, there's room behind it to plug in the power cables like that, or you can plug in from the front. And as I've built in both the Lian Li 217 and the Evo XL for this video, I'll show you a number of different things that you need to know about it as we go through. But in both cases, it ends up looking really nice and very clean. At the rear, you'll see that as you move it into the three different vertical positions, the ports are still easy to access and easy to get your cables into. And you just use thumb screws to secure it into position once you've finished and you're happy with how it's sitting. Now this comes with a PCIe Gen 5 riser cable. It's available in black or white, and it has a 5V RGB connection so you can easily sync up that lighting strip with the rest of your build. The back might look a bit intimidating with a number of screws, but you only need to remove one of these two thumb screws to adjust it, so you can see it'll go up and down to account for larger or smaller coolers, and your case or the other thumb screw will allow you to adjust the position of it. You do, however, need at least 6 PCIe brackets removed from the back of your case, and this is an important part. It'll work with most cases, but they do need to be ATX compatible, so it needs to have an ATX motherboard size and at least 6 brackets. This is important because I tried this with the Lian Li Mini V2, which as you can see only has 5 brackets available in that case because of the size of the case as a whole. In theory, it looked like it might fit in here, but we've got angled fans on the bottom of the case, which is something to account for, and it is quite compact. You'll see if I try and fit the bracket into this case that it simply won't fit because it interferes with the bottom fans. Perhaps if those fans weren't there, it might fit still, but generally speaking, you need to make sure you've got 6 brackets available, and that will give you an idea of whether it will fit into the build or not. Now, the Lian Li 217 and the Evo XL obviously have enough room, as you've seen, and it's much easier to fit the bracket into there without any problems. So it just slots into the back once you remove those brackets from there and then secures in there. As you'll see, it hooks into the rear here in the usual way that a GPU would install any other anti-sag bracket. So it's pretty simple in terms of this fitment, but it is fiddly because of other things, which we'll get to in a second. And you do need to make sure, as I said, that it will fit in your case before you buy it, because you don't want to be disappointed after all. You'll see in the Evo XL, not a problem at all, because this case is massive and it has plenty of ports back there. And I end up just not removing the top bracket, remove 6 below that and leave the bottom one in, and then it will just slot in place here and fairly easily sets up in that position and then secures in. So that's a nice part of this bracket and the installation of it. And there are definitely some other highlights to it, one of which is this anti-sag bracket setup. Now this is a little bit faffy to fit into the case and a bit of a fiddle, but it is definitely a nice addition. You don't see this with a lot of vertical GPU mounts, so it gives additional support to your graphics card even when it's in this position. In order to install this, how it works is you remove 2 of the screws that are screwed to your motherboard, and then in their place you get these long standoffs that then sit into those holes, and you have a tool to secure those in place. So with an ATX motherboard, this will then secure on the right hand side here, as you can see, just above the USB-A port in this instance, and it secures into that and then uses this tool to tighten it up. And then the other standoff sits at the very bottom just below the F panel set up there, and that secures down as well. And then the bracket goes over the top of it. If you have a look at the back of the bracket, you'll notice that it has rungs on it as well. The reason for this is also adjustable, so it will account for the size of your case and the positioning of how you're putting the vertical GPU mount into it, because there are different options available depending on the height that it's sitting at, because there's obviously 3 different positions. There's a default position, there's an up position, and a down position. So you can account for how tall your CPU cooler is and adjust to fit that, which is quite nice. So with it set up into the case, you can see when I try and put the vertical mount in that it's now getting in the way of the anti-sag bracket, because it isn't in the right position for how I've got it set up in this case. So I need to reposition it. And this is why it's a little bit fiddly. I'd recommend, if you are purchasing this, just go through these initial setup steps, work out where it's going to fit and how it's going to set up in the case, and then adjust these things accordingly. Take some time with it as well. This is not a 5-minute job. It does take a little bit of messing about. And then you can slot it into the case, and then hopefully it'll fit on the right-hand side with that support bracket holding on to the little pin that sticks out of the edge. As you can see, with a little bit of convincing, it now sits in there. As you saw from earlier in the video, there's 3 notches on this as well. So depending on how you've got the GPU angled in the 3 different directional positions, this will then sit into one of those pins accordingly, but you do need to make sure it's adjusted so that when it's in a default position, it's in the middle. So I once again had to remove that anti-sag bracket and just move it up a little bit on the rungs in order to make sure it was sitting there properly. I'm obviously showing you unnecessary amounts of detail here perhaps, but I do want to show you how it works, because there are other simple things to it, like the shortness of the riser cable, for example. This is really nice because you usually get a really long riser cable that you have to try and hide away. It does have its downsides though, because that's a quick release slot on this motherboard, which means you can just tug it out really easily, and I accidentally did that when adjusting the position of the graphics card, but more on that later on. The other highlight here is the 3-pin 5V RGB connection for that bottom RGB strip. You'll see that has both a male and a female connection, so you can either plug it directly into the motherboard or you can chain it into other 5V RGB connections that you already have in your system and get it matching up with the other things in there. Installing the GPU is pretty easy as well. So this is a 9070 XT, which isn't huge, but is pretty large. And it slots in there with relative ease and then just screws into the bracket, securing it to the top. Lian Li says that you can put GPUs into this bracket that are up to 4 slots thick, so you can put really large ones in there. Obviously, this is going to depend on a number of things, like your CPU cooler and the size of your case. But once it's in, remove that thumb screw from the rear and then you can adjust the position of it. Now, I found this useful because you can tilt it forwards so you can plug your cables in, as you saw me do earlier on and see me doing again here. So it makes it easier to access those, and then you can adjust it into the position you want to put it in and just to have it set up there. And as you can see, it looks really nice in this setup. So you can have it set back like this so it's really showing it off, or tilt it forward more if you want to get more cooling. So as you can see, a pretty awesome vertical GPU mount. There are some things that are worth mentioning though. So I had a problem with it in the Evo XL. Now this is probably a bit of a niche issue, but obviously with the vertical GPU mount, the problem that you're going to have is airflow potentially. Now with the Evo XL, there should be loads of room in there, and on paper there was, but what I found was it was actually causing my system to crash, because when angled like I had it so that you could see more of the graphics card, the air from the back of it was then heating up the motherboard and causing some of my PCIe Gen 5 NVMes to overheat. Now this is an issue I've actually seen before in the Have an HS420V GPU, where the graphics card was also vertically mounted and close to the motherboard, and it essentially caused the system to freeze and crash, and it's caused me no end of issues to the point I've actually had to just go back to the standard mounting for the graphics card. However, in the Lancool 217, no problems, and it's probably niche because I've only got Gen 5 drives in the motherboard in my main build, and they do get very toasty, and if they do get very hot, it can lead to problems. So I think that's what the issue is there. And obviously I could angle it the other way so that it's facing more down towards the case and away from the motherboard, and then it wouldn't cause issues like it has done there. The other problem that I mentioned is on that motherboard in my Evo XL, it's got a quick release on the X16 slot. So in theory, you can pull the graphics card out from the left-hand side without having to press any buttons first. It's a design from Asus that allows you to release that cable really easily. What I found was when I was adjusting the graphics card in those multiple different positions vertically, it actually just tugged the power cable out of the X16 slot, so that cable just came out there, which then obviously would have not worked if I'd turned the system on and tried to run it with that. So you have to watch out for that, the little things. But the fact that it's a short riser cable is beneficial in a lot of ways, because it obviously means you haven't got loads of riser cable to hide behind the graphics card, and it just connects directly up. It's also a Gen 5 riser cable, meaning you should get maximum speed out of a 50 series GPU from NVIDIA, for example. So a lot of benefits. It's a really nice mount. It's a little bit fiddly to install, but you do have a really nice setup at the end of it. Just watch out for compatibility with your case. And thanks very much for watching the video. I hope it's helped. You've made it right to the end of the video, you brilliant legend you. If you've enjoyed it, click that subscribe button, give me a thumbs up, and drop me a comment down below if you've got any questions. If you really enjoyed it, consider joining the channel and see the benefits of doing so. Check out these other videos. You might well find them interesting or useful. And most importantly, have a great life.